relaunching the Warrior Academy podcast. We've got an amazing lineup already.
I spilled boiling water onto myself and I sustained third-degree burns to 15% of my body.
28 days in ICU where he was very critical because I thought it doesn't matter as long as he lives.
Depressed and sad because of what had happened, but I was also blaming myself, and then the doctor would say, you're on a path to self-destruction, you're doing this to yourself.
My father turned to me and he said, this whole Muslim thing, I've had enough. You won't come home with us tonight and you won't be my son.
So today I'm going to be talking about the Warrior Academy podcast. So the Warrior Academy podcast started, I think, in 2020 during lockdowns, when we really created a lot of content for the podcast. The whole point of the Warrior Academy podcast was to provide parents in the Warrior Academy with lots of insights into really relevant topics that could actually help them with developing their child's character. During lockdown, when I was stuck in actually this room that I'm recording in right now, the office at home, like everybody else who was stuck at home, what I did is I really doubled down on creating podcasts. So I used the time at home as an opportunity to interview lots of incredible speakers from around the world. Within 60 days, I think I did about 60 plus podcast interviews. A lot of the podcasts were actually live interviews, so they were live streamed onto the Warrior Academy Facebook groups as well, which added another kind of element to it, right? Interviewing when you're not live is one thing, but interviewing live is something very different, and it was quite exciting to do that. So we did 60 live recordings in 60 days. That was a mixture for the Warrior Academy podcast, as well as a podcast called Round Pegs, Square Holes that I created to help provide small business owners with extra support to keep their businesses going during lockdown, which is obviously a really difficult time. We created these podcasts and it was a massive success. The Warrior Academy podcast got to number 3 in education on iTunes, and the Round Pegs, Square Holes podcast got to number 1 in iTunes for entrepreneurship and small businesses. What's the point of this video? Well, the point of this video and this podcast episode is to let you know that we are relaunching the Warrior Academy podcast. I've realized just how useful these episodes can be for parents, but also for our students. And so what I'd like to do is just to give you a bit of an insight into how we're going to be structuring the Warrior Academy podcast and what you guys can expect at home. So essentially there's going to be 3 elements to the Warrior Academy podcast. One of them is going to be the live interviews that we do. The next is going to be deep insights that we provide. And the third thing will be podcasts for children. And so let me just break each of those 3 elements down. The live interviews are going to be a mixture of Zoom calls where we'll be interviewing people from around the world who can't make it to Dubai. And this will be individuals who have done incredibly well within sports, thought leaders, best-selling authors. We've got child development experts. We've got fitness experts, health experts, mindfulness, parenting, biohacking, you name it. Anything I think that our audience of Warrior Academy parents would find really interesting and really useful, inspiring characters from around the world, basically. But we've also got live interviews where we're actually going to be interviewing people at the dojo and doing video interviews. So these are UAE-based individuals, people with incredible backgrounds. We've got an amazing lineup already, which I'm really excited to record. Have some really deep, meaningful conversations, which I hope parents really enjoy. They'll be about 60 minutes long as well. So that's the first element, live interviews. The next will be insights, so deep insights. What I've realized is we get asked a lot of questions at the Warrior Academy. You know, what are 3 things I can do to help develop my child's confidence at home? What can I do to increase sibling harmony on the school run? What do I do if my child's going through bullying? What can I do to help my child with anxiety? All these little subjects come up. These questions come up time and time again. So what I thought I would do is help provide the families around the world with our point of view as your child's instructors, but also the ethos and the methodology behind the Warrior Academy and our point of view in how we can help you as parents and the students through some of those challenges and answering some of those questions. Just a quick shout out to the guys at Shield who manage this podcast, come up with the strategy behind the podcast, help me schedule interviews, as well as do all of the editing and the producing of the podcast. Without them, we wouldn't be able to produce this podcast. If you would like to create your own podcast, I can't recommend the Shield team enough. They have done well over 100 episodes for me over the last few years, and I've been so pleased with the results. So have a look in the description of this video or the podcast episode, and you'll see how to get in touch with them yourself. So we call them deep dives or deep insights. They'll probably be about 10 minutes long, similar sort of length to this video here, and just enough to give you as a parent a quick insight, something you can easily implement. One of the things I always find with podcasts is it's good fun to listen to. Sometimes it's motivating to listen to, but the reality is it's just entertainment until you take that knowledge and implement it. So I always like to leave a podcast episode with 3 things that you can do at home to implement it in order to benefit straight away. So that's going to be the real focus around the insights, right? The deep dives or the insights. 10 minutes where you can get bullet pointed ideas of things you can do at home straight away to help you, your family, your children, whatever it is that we're talking about. The third thing is something completely new, which I'm really excited to do. And these are podcasts specifically for children. Right now in the Warrior Academy, we host mat chats. And a mat chat is typically a 3 to 6 minute chat that your instructor does every single week in class at the very end of class. They sit all the students around and they make sure the students are listening and engaged. And then what we do is we do a deep dive on a subject around character development. And it's normally something really engaging, really exciting that children want to listen to. They're excited to listen to. What we found is that we might talk about the importance of respect or good behavior or conduct or how to be confident, or we might talk about body language or bullying. There's a million different topics, as you can imagine. But what we found to be the most successful way to pass on that knowledge with the ultimate goal of bringing the lessons from the dojo to the home and school life is through storytelling. When you tell a story to a child, they're listening, they're more engaged, but they also remember the lessons, right? So it's much easier for a child to recall a story than it is for them to recall facts or figures or bullet points. So we actually do a lot of our teaching through storytelling, which if you're a Warrior Academy member, maybe you're already aware of. And so these little stories we're going to start recording. What you might find is that you're on a school run with your children in the morning, and there's a really important podcast episode / mat chat story that we release that week about something really relevant, which could be a story about how 2 children used to argue on the school run, and now they realized what an impact that made in the family. And they realized that it was much better for them to get on in the morning so that there was less stress at home. And so little things like that, we think, which can help parents on the day-to-day living and looking after their children. And a story like that would teach a child empathy and good conduct and the impact of their behavior and actions. Another good example is a story about how a child learned how to use breathing techniques, and it became a superpower because whenever they were, feeling stressed or overwhelmed or hyper anxious, they could use these breathing techniques to calm themselves down, and they felt strong and happy and comfortable. And so that obviously is a lesson in teaching a child to independently regulate their own emotions. So we tell these stories all the time in class anyway, and we realize, why don't we just record them and give them to children and parents? And now, what we want to do is, over the course of a year, have a different story every single week that children can listen to on the way to school, on the way to class, or just at home, even before they go to bed. Some of them would act as really good nighttime stories. So we're trying to split those up so they're age specific. When we tell the stories in class, they're normally for juniors or seniors or teens. So we have a different way of telling the story for each age group. So we'll try and do that as well with the kids podcasts. Those are the 3 elements of the Warrior Academy podcast that we are going to be launching. We expect to be launching that in September, the beginning of September, the start of the new academic year in 2023. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. What do you think of these new concepts? Do you think it's going to be valuable for our Warrior Academy members? Is there anything in particular you would like us to talk about? Are there any people you feel we should interview either live on Zoom from around the world or locally in Dubai that you think would bring a lot of value to our members and our listeners? So hopefully that's really useful. Make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel as well if you're watching YouTube, or follow us on Instagram. All the links are in the description of this video. And so we're really looking forward to sharing the Warrior Academy podcast with all of you.